It's an article up here arguing that the Democratic Party needs to become more of an ideologically left-wing party to counter the ideological right-wing shift in the Republican Party. My reaction is that I think this is half right, but it's stuck in two-party politics. I lived my whole life in a three-party system. We have a conservative party that is roughly equivalent to the American Democrats. And in the late 70s, when it was morning in America for the conservative movement, the Canadian Conservative Party was campaigning on legalizing marijuana. You can look that up. It was Joe Clark in the 1979 election. Clinton and Obama would both be Tories in Canada, and that's very much true. In fact, Obama himself has stated that most people outside of the United States would consider him a conservative, because he is. We have a Liberal Party that is historically more equivalent to the American Green Party, but would also be the party of your Elizabeth Warrens, and we have an NDP that has historically been a socialist party and advocated for things like state-controlled industry. In fact, they succeeded in nationalizing the oil industry for a while. The name of the state-run oil company was Petro-Canada. Sanders would be a member of the NDP in Canada, and frankly, he's just about the only American politician that I can think of, with the possible exception of Dennis Kucinich. It's it's no secret that socialism is not a wildly held philosophy in the United States, but even so, the NDP is a fairly mild variant of socialism, and it's very difficult to find anybody in the United States that would actually uphold that set of philosophies. The American Republican Party would be a fringe movement in Canada. The closest thing would be the Social Credit Party, which turned into the Reform Party, and to a large extent is the basis of the modern Conservative Party. But it didn't last. I mean, the Conservatives very quickly pulled back to their Tory roots, right? And the Socrats had weird economic policies and strange anti-Semitic twinges. So it's a bad comparison overall. But I mean, the closest thing to like a Bible party in Canada would have been the Socrats, and they don't exist anymore. Now the spectrum may be skewed left up here. It's true, but it's not really the point I'm getting at. The point is that we have three parties, not two, and so we have three orientations. We have the right wing, we have the left wing, and then we have the center. And the center is very important. In practice, it's neither the left nor the right that run the country. It's the center, which is usually the Liberal Party. When it hasn't been the Liberal Party, when it's been the Conservative Party has also broadly existed in the center, although it keeps getting kicked out, right? We could do this a few different ways. I like to bring in the idea of dialectics, because if you look at the old literature, democracy has something to do with dialectics. The thing is that America has never understood dialectics, and I think America would be the first person to admit that it doesn't understand dialectics. It may even say that there's something foreign or strange about dialectics, but in doing so it would be misunderstanding its own history. There's this idea in the American political philosophy that if you get right and left at each other's throat, you end up with synthesis in the form of bipartisanship. So you hear this all over the spectrum. You hear about working together across the aisle, and I don't like that kind of language. To me, it's very scary language. It tells me that, you have a Washington consensus, you have a one-party state, right? But if you know where it comes from, you know that what the language, where it initially came from. Like, when you hear people talk about that nowadays, it might mostly be reflective of of a corporatocracy. But where it comes from, the philosophical roots of it are synthesis and dialectics. Except in reality, there's never been anything remotely close to a synthesis in the United States. Okay, it's never how America's worked. America's it hasn't all. There have been situations where there's been more than two people running, but it's been a two-party system pretty much all the way through, and you never get any real synthesis in a two-party system. Okay, what you get you get tugs and pulls on the center. Okay, you get this tug of war where you get the right and left and they're pulling and pulling, and the direction of government depends on who's pulling harder, right? And because nobody ever wins a tug of war, what you get are pendulums sweeping back and forth. All right, that's the American system of government. It's not ideas building on top of each other, synthesis, all this nice Hegelian logic. Instead, it's just childish arguments pulling back and forth. The right hand erases the left, and the left erases the right. In the long run, nothing really gets solved. You just go over the same arguments over and over again, and that's the opposite of what was intended. Okay? If I'm not being clear, what I'm saying is that the American system of government is a failure. And the reason the American system of government is a failure is that it's a two-party system. And so you'll hear people come back and say, well, America's a two-party state. Yeah, America is a two-party state, and that's why it's a broken state. Okay, that's why your country sucks. Right? So if you want to fix your country, you need to fix the two-party system. Nothing will ever get better in America until you break the two-party system apart. Okay? And the longer you realize that, the longer you prolong your own misery. Okay? The Reagan era undid the FDR era. The next generation will return the favor and throw Reagan in the dustbin as it resurrects FDR. And will this go on forever? It will, if you maintain a two-party system. The pendulum will swing into perpetuity. And the founders will have failed. In fact, I think that we can already say that the founders did fail. That the system they intended has not worked the way they intended it to. It's worked in terms of class hierarchies and everything, but it hasn't worked in terms of the propagation of ideas. They wanted synthesis, and they have not gotten it. The two-party system was about dialectics. It was supposed to be about dialectics. It was not supposed to be about pendulums. And so where has the kind of system that the American framers wanted been successful? It was successful in Canada, where there's a three-party system that presents a functional dialectic by sending thesis and antithesis to the partisan extremes and then letting serious policy happen in the center. So it happens to be that the same party that brought us single-payer healthcare in the 60s, when that made sense, also brought us balanced budgets in the 90s, when that made sense. And it's maybe worthwhile to reflect that the United States neither has single-payer healthcare nor balanced budgets. Okay? Neither the left nor the right have accomplished what they wanted. Because the pendulum has just swung back and forth. And they've just argued and bitched and complained. In a country where a synthesis has been allowed to occur, okay, the aims of both sides of the spectrum have been accomplished. And by existing in the center and synthesizing ideas from the parties on the left and right, the liberals have been able to govern empirically. Okay, and that's the key in breaking through the ideological arguments. Okay, you don't want bipartisanship. What does that mean? It means class hierarchy, right? It means oligarchy. The way to break through ideological divides is not to say that the upper class makes all the choices. It's to look at the situation and use the scientific method to come up with reasonable conclusions or reasonable approaches to difficult problems using scientific approaches, research, and funding research to get to that aim, right? It sounds like a pipe dream to a lot of Americans. There's a place where that happens? Yeah. In fact, most of the world, that's the way it happens. Because most of the world doesn't have a two-party system where people are pulling on the center from the different extremes. And demanding that their ideology trump science and evidence. Okay? And in a broader sense, maybe it shouldn't be surprising that people on the outside are looking at America and saying, hey, you need to pay more attention to empiricism. because everything that you do is based on ideology and religion and other, types of mind control, right? And I've been saying this for months. In fact, I've been saying it for years. Matthew is right to point out that the Democrats are not a party of the left at all. They never have been. Okay? Even in the heights of the FDR period, if you listen to them carefully, and if you listen to historians carefully, it was all about saving capitalism. Okay? It was never a left-wing party. In the sense that the Democrats used the left, it was co-option. Uh, it was to use them to carry out political goals. There was some compromise. The unions won more than a few things, but you have to put that in the context of the whole Fordist system, which was based around the idea of consumption. It was the system, right? You can look at rising wages and say, hey, workers won this for striking. It's a little bit disingenuous. The reality is that the American system of capitalism was designed to ensure that workers had money to spend. That was the way the system was designed. And, it's not Karl Marx that designed it, and it's not, Eugene Debs that won it. It was actually Henry Ford that set the system up that way. Not to take too much away from the union movements and the IWW and the whole thing, but the actual truth is that the system that was put in place was not put in. It was not oppositional to union interests in the way that the system is now, and in the way that Marxist theory would argue that it should be. It was very different, right? But even with that said, the whole thing was constructed to save capitalism, right? So it was never a party of the left. A real party of the left is a party that's opposed to capitalism. Democrats are never been opposed to capitalism. It's crazy talk, right? So the solution is not for the left to take over the Democrats either. We're not getting anywhere turning the Democrats into a socialist party. Okay. Matthew correctly points out that would just put the Republicans in power for the next 100 years. Okay. The solution is for the left to stop cooperating with the Democrats. Okay, to spin itself off and let the Democrats in the middle. And tell the Democrats, okay, that... See, this is the problem. Okay, the way that you have the system in the United States right now is that the Democrats look at the left and they say, you have to vote for us or the Republicans will win. In Canada, it works the other way around. Okay? The left tells the Liberals that you have to listen to us or we're going to put the Conservatives in. It's the same basic power dynamic, except that we've swung it around the other way. Okay? So the NDP constantly holds the balance of power. That's the Socialist Party. Constantly holds the balance of power. Because if at any point in time the Liberals say, if the Liberals at any point in time wake up and say, fuck the left, we're gonna, privatize healthcare and, the hell with you. What's gonna happen is that we're gonna vote for the NDP. And, either we're going to elect the NDP or more likely is that we're going to split the vote and we're going to elect the Conservatives. And then the Liberals are in an impossible situation when that happens. Because they can never win an argument on the right just due to demographics and just the basic reality that if you're a conservative, you're going to vote for the Conservatives, right? You're not going to vote for the Liberals if you're a conservative. That's why there's a Conservative Party. It's for conservatives, right? And so the Liberals are constantly stuck in a brick wall there. And they try it, Okay? They've tried more than once to try to win elections on the right, and they just can't. Okay? The only way the liberals can win an election is to convince NDP voters to vote for them, and the only way they can do that is to put policies on the left. Okay? And that's the reason why we have single-payer health care. It's the reason why we're legalizing marijuana. It's the reason why, etc., etc., etc. Okay? Because there's all that pressure there coming from the party on the left that says, if you don't do what, if you liberals don't do what we say, then the conservatives will win. Now imagine if it was the other way around. Imagine if that was the case in the States. The way that would work would be like this. Bernie Sanders would go to Hillary Clinton and say, you're going to do what I say, or we're not going to vote for you. And the Republicans will win. Could you imagine? It's the exact opposite, right? What happens is the Democrats go to Sanders supporters and say, you'd better vote for us or the Republicans will win. And that's the difference between an actual democracy and what is essentially an oligarchy. Okay? Canada is a democracy, and so the people have the power, right? We tell the politicians what to do. The United States is not a democracy. And so it tells the people what to do. And what I'm saying here is that the great hope of Sanders, what he might be able to accomplish is he might be able to swing that around. I know that most Americans, most progressive Americans, people that identify themselves as considerably left of center cannot even imagine this. The scenario is outlandish to them. People getting together and demanding that the Democrats do what they say, or they won't vote for them, and they'll let the Republicans win. You get op-eds about privilege. You'll get, accusations of racism. It would be unheard of, right? It's called democracy. Maybe you might want to think about that.